Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We're doing a special edition of the show today. We have a panel for you. This was actually suggested by Adam Kokesh, and I think that it's a really good idea. It's freedom and the military is the topic of this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and bring these guys on. They unfortunately they cannot see. They can't see me, but the audience clearly can see everybody. So I just want to make some quick introductions. You see Adam Kokesh there on the screen. Adam, say hi. Every time you guys talk, it's going to increase this down. We, of course, know Adam Kokesh, author, activist, almost needs no introduction. Also with us, we have Arvin Vohra, who's the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. We also have Larry Sharpe, who's the managing director of the Neo-Sage Group. Larry, if you could say hi to the people as well. So gentlemen, hold on one second. All right. So gentlemen, the discussion that we're going to have today is about the military, which is definitely a hot button issue. Military and police is always a hot button issue for libertarians. There's been a little bit of controversy. I guess it's mainly sort of sparked off within the Libertarian Party off an article that was written by Arvin. I don't want to get into the controversy too much in terms of creating an argument here, but Arvin, if you would like to sort of start this out, and if you could explain to us the thesis of the article that you presented that had so much controversy surrounding it. We won't get into the controversy, but I do think that there is a very, very constructive discussion that can be had on this. So Arvin, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So I'll say what the original intent of the article was.
Please.
What I've noticed is that right now, in the libertarian movement, there are a lot of people who are frankly afraid of criticizing the military at all. In the last couple of weeks, many people have reached out to me thanking me for allowing them to not have to be as afraid as they were to say anything about the military that was anything other than worshipful. The goal of the article was to try to bring to light a perspective that I thought was dangerous and toxic, which is that you cannot be an organization that is working to end the power of the state at the same time lionizing the thing which gives the state its power. Now, in that process, there's definitely some phrasing that I would have done very differently, and there's definitely some word choices that I might have made very differently, to say the least. And I do know that a lot of people were offended in a way that was non-productive, and I'm sorry for that. But the goal is definitely, and the goal was, and for me still is, to really cast a very critical eye on the role of the military, to indicate that both the military itself has become a problematic institution in the modern era, and that the encouraging somebody, the joining of such an organization in the modern era, the way it stands, is something that I believe is a bad idea, often taken with good intentions. And so I really wanted to cast a very critical light on that.
Okay, so I believe that certainly I'm an anarchist, you know what I mean? And I believe that people who are a little more radical libertarians, the tip of the spear are police and of course, and military. Adam, you yourself, when I've heard you speak, you speak out vociferously for advising people not to join the military. Why do you feel or do you feel that this is not the correct tact for the party to be taking, or do you feel that this is not the correct tact for libertarians to be taking? I mean, you yourself speak out against, at least as I see it, speak out against the military often.
Well, from my experience, I was in Fallujah in 2004, and what I talk about a lot is how my experiences affected me. And just if I may step back about making this a messaging conversation, every libertarian who cares about spreading the message should at least have a basic familiarity with nonviolent communication. You don't speak in an accusatory tone, you speak from your own experience. And I speak from having tortured people, how that's affected me. And it's really tough. Having started with Iraq Veterans Against the War and my activism, I was surrounded by lefties who had no compunction about saying everything they could, baby killers, things like, like going into that realm of accusatory, derogatory language that's not necessary. But I've said, enough of those kinds of things myself because, it came from that realization about what I did and how evil it was. So, I'm really glad that Arvin's come out with this. And I think it's almost really sad that someone criticizes the military, the U.S. military, the most destructive, violent institution in the entire world today. And the reaction is like, well, we didn't like your wording. We have as libertarians an incredible calling, as people who have an opportunity to share this insight to make the world a better place. And we have to come to the heart of it, which is challenging militarism. And I think we've been kind of grappling with that as a movement for a while. And it's really important that we not pull punches and yet be non-accusatory in our language and in our presentation of that. I think it's really great that we're finally coming into this point as a movement where we're not pandering anymore. There's a great temptation. I think Arvin exposed a kind of different dangerous line of thinking, that there are a lot of people who are coming into our movement from the right who think, we can have a constitutional government that still has a strong military and it's still freedom oriented. And it's like, no, even if you want to go to that, sorry, the founders were against a standing army. They were explicit about wanting a militia kind of defense rather than a government kind of national defense. And we can be direct about that without pandering to them, without saying, yeah, you can, sure, as we welcome people in, they're going to be offended. As they face difficult truths, as we all were, they're going to be offended. We should be positive and encouraging and be able to stand our ground in bringing them into this movement.
Well, Larry, I want to ask you about this, because part of being a political party is recognizing that you're going to have to address the situation as it stands. And I'm a radical anarchist, and that's I feel like, okay, I can criticize the military or the police. I'm not going to ever have to be in charge of the military or the police. I'm not ever going to have veterans voting for me, etc. So, I guess my question to you, Larry, if you want to pick this up and maybe if you want to take this further, isn't there a certain responsibility if you're going to be involved in the political process with police, with military, being a part of that political process? Isn't there some level of responsibility at a party level to play that game? I don't want to use that term, but to at least not alienate those people who are potentially going to be working for you?
Without question. I mean, that's the whole point. Nothing that Arvin just said, nothing that Adam just said do I disagree with. I don't disagree with any of it. Yes, they're correct. What I'm saying is, I can't have, say, my example I've given is, say, women, there are three women walking into a Libertarian Party meeting at a local city or county, and all three of them are single mothers, and they're all on welfare. Somehow in their life, they figured out this is a bad idea, and it's actually holding them back. They figured this out. It's holding them back. They've got to do something about it, and that's why they showed up. Maybe their friend told them, maybe they heard something on TV, maybe they saw a Facebook post, and they walk into the Libertarian Party local event. And the first thing we say when they walk in the door and they explain who they are, we go, oh, you're a welfare queen. We're against welfare. We start that way? Oh my God, no, I don't want to start that way. I want to talk to them about how there are better ways of getting them off welfare, how welfare is actually hurting them, how the government is making them actually worse off than better off. I want to discuss those things so that they, in their own mind, as Adam has said, in their own minds go, wow, I'm a welfare queen. Wow. I was talking to someone recently about the idea of what he had done in the military. This has happened to a couple people I've spoken to recently, and many of them have actually killed people. Mm-hmm. And what they said to me was, I live with that every day. I don't have to be reminded of that. I get it, and that's why I'm in the party. And it's the same thing with someone who's on welfare, who's been on welfare. It doesn't mean they're bad because they're on welfare. If they get it, they want to get off. We should be helping them to come on. So that's my biggest issue. I want to bring them in, and I want them to vote for me. If I walk up to someone and say, you're a welfare queen, you're terrible, the odds of them voting for me are pretty slim because their emotion will tell them no. People don't vote on what's logical. People vote on what they feel. And if they feel like I think they're a jerk, they're not going to vote for me, regardless if I'm smart, if I have the right answer or not. And so my goal is to get us elected, because what I really want to do is not just say the truth. I do want to say the truth. But I also want to say it in a way that gets people to come on so that we can change that truth. I don't just want to be righteous and point my finger and say, you're a bad guy, you're a bad gal, this is bad. I also want to say, join me so we can change it so it's not bad anymore. Now, this is a very important piece that I heard, and I made some mistakes in my messaging too, and I've apologized also. I think the way I was very emotional here because I felt personally attacked. I was emotional. I was wrong, and I've apologized, and I'll apologize again. I think we have to have radicals and anarchists in the party. There are a chunk of people who don't believe that, who think they should all be removed. I am not one of those people in any way, shape, or form. That's not who I am. In fact, I'm one of the most pro-anarchists, pro-radicals you're going to find who's in that medium realm. Mm-hmm. Because I believe we need you to be that shining North Star for us. If we don't have that, to Adam's point, people are going to start coming in. And if they come in and all the radicals leave and anarchists leave, we're going to become Republican light or Democrat light, depending on how many people come in from what side. And then why are we bothering, wasting our time? Why are we even here? I might as well just go home, right? So I'm trying to find that balance, and that balance is hard. And to your point, I'm trying to say, Vin, to your point, that this whole thing was actually a good thing in the long run. This was growing pains that we had to go through to make this work. So I didn't like it when it was happening at all. However, as I look back, fine, it was the right thing.
Arvin, my question to you then is, I mean, isn't that a reasonable stand to take? I mean, isn't there a certain responsibility as a member of the Libertarian Party to not alienate the potential constituency of those people who are out there busting their butt trying to get elected? I mean, isn't that the job of the Libertarian Party to get elected? And doesn't that necessarily mean that at times, I don't want to say you put certain principles on the back burner, but certainly that you pick sort of the least noxious battles? Isn't that a relatively reasonable thing to ask, Arvin?
No, I don't think that's actually the right thing, because this is a different situation. You don't see people in the Libertarian Party who are, say, running for office or state chairs or county chairs bragging about the fact that they've been on welfare. If anything, they hide it. Now, I know a lot of libertarians who actually have been on welfare. You talk to them, you know people well, they'll tell you the truth, but they don't brag about it. They don't create a situation that makes the entire world think that the Libertarian Party supports welfare. Now, there are some movements that now kind of are actually doing that, and I think that's a totally different problem.
Yes.
And so I don't think that it's our job just to get elected for the sake of being elected. I think that we have a few things to do. One is definitely to address the cultural norms. If we go around being just another party along with the ruling two parties that go around saying everything the military does is good and everybody's in the military is doing everything heroic all the time, we are therefore endorsing one of the most destructive policies in the entire world today. The idea that we should stay away from explosive issues, I think, is also just bad strategy. If you look at the way politics is today, right now, there is no evidence that's true. In fact, the evidence seems to suggest that people who are far more incendiary than I've ever been, who are deliberately rather than inadvertently trying to get everybody angry.
Are you talking about Trump here?
I'm talking about Trump here.
Okay.
They're successful, and Trump is not the only one. I mean, what's happening with Trump is happening across across not just America but across the world. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in other countries, and so the idea that it's somehow good strategy for us to be, soda tax libertarians, where we only talk about soda taxes or legalizing alcohol sales on Sundays, that is not the point of what we're doing. If we are not picking a battle, if there is nobody on the other side of the battle, if we are trying to create our messaging and make it so soft and so inoffensive that no one has any reason to oppose it, it probably means that what we're doing is not worth fighting, and therefore, in my opinion, it's probably not worth doing. So while I agree that it's good to be maybe a little bit more careful about the messaging and word choice and things like that, staying away from the big issues, which to me are military, government schools, government healthcare, and Social Security, staying away from those is moral cowardice and is failing our fundamental responsibility as both a party and as a movement.
And I agree. I want to make sure something, Vin. I just want to be clear.
Please.
I was not saying that we shouldn't do that. I agree completely with what Arvin just said. All I was saying is I didn't want the personal attack on the individual, but I absolutely think we should exactly what he said is correct. Yes, We should be attacking them and heavily, and I do so also. I think we should. Yes, 100%.
Okay, well,
If I may,
hold on, Adam, because I have a question for you in this regard, because I think it directly goes to, you are beginning your not for president campaign for 2020. You're a former member of the military. You're a combat veteran. Your activism has been on behalf of veterans and anti-war. Where it seems to me like it seems to me like it's almost directly going to what your strong suit should be. I mean, that you don't want to alienate veterans up front. If of all the libertarian candidates, you seem like the one that might actually be able to get some real military votes of active military. So I mean, isn't this a dangerous precedent for the party that you are running for president with? Isn't that I mean, I understand, of course, it's my own principle, but I mean, if we're trying to get people elected, isn't that a dangerous stand to take?
Well, first, just to go, I think I can address that by going back to what Arvin said
please.
About taking on the big issues and what are those big issues versus being I think it's great to sort of dismiss it as the soda tax libertarians who want to trick you with these relatively petty issues. The core of the libertarian philosophy is about force and violence and self-ownership and peace and cooperation, and that's, if we shy away from that, we're losing the message. And if you win someone over on the soda tax issue, if you win someone over on these superficial issues, that right before they go into the voting booth, they're going to get scared. Oh, but we can't have Hillary, we got to vote for Trump. Or we can't have Trump, we got to vote for Hillary. What we're really in the business of, and I think I'm going to use a word here that I know is going to set some people off, but we are in the business of winning converts, not voters. And when I say converts, I don't mean in a religious sense, obviously, but in a ideological sense. And it's not in a way that we need to think about in a derogatory way. We're going to convert you. We're going to beat you over the head with our vision. No, we are converting people to thinking for themselves. And when you win them over on that deeper issue of force and violence, self-ownership, it's not about the violence. It's about peace and cooperation and harmony among human beings. They don't go back. You don't lose them on the next election cycle. They become part of this movement, and that's really important. And there's a lot of talk about, well, we got to have unity this, unity that. We got to, it's like, and then people talk about herding cats, right? And of course, the message of freedom speaks to all of us as independent, conscious human beings at the soul level. It really is that deep, and it is a very personal experience that we have with this message. So while we're never going to have unity in this organization or in messaging like this, what we can have when we stay true to the message is unity and being true to that unity at that deeper level. And I just want to go back to this. I can't reinforce this enough. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, and I think it addresses all of the issues that we're looking at here, because you speak from your own experience and you never accuse anyone of anything else. That is so huge. We can be absolutely direct. Hey, when you sign up for the military, yeah, you're getting paid to kill or help kill people. There's no way around that. If you're doing that, hate the sin, not the sinner. And it's the same thing within the party. And this is where we get movement unity, at least in the movement sense. And this is where we see who's really true to this message. And we're not perfect with this. Nobody's perfect with nonviolent communication. It's really good for relationships. And if you've ever been in a romantic relationship where you're both up on nonviolent communication, it's really tempting to be like, hey, that wasn't NBC. Hey, that wasn't NBC. But there's a positive way to do that. And I think what we need to do as a movement is build each other up as messengers of freedom and say, look, we can be unified in our principles. And one of them is, when we talk about this, it's hate the sin, not the sinner. Because I think there's a deeper, even more fundamental unity to the message of freedom, which is like a universal human family kind of unity. When we are able to see what we're doing as libertarians is bringing about a more libertarian society, is making things more harmonious, more peaceful among all human beings all over the world, that's the real deeper kind of unity that I think is inherent to this message. And if we stay true to that, we get all the guidance that we need talking about the message in terms of militarism. And I got to say, I am really excited that the movement has come to this point where we can have this conversation, because it's not about the soda tax kinds of issues anymore. We're going, oh yeah, libertarianism, it means militarism is fundamentally ethically wrong. Having a forced, violent, coercive system for a monopoly on protection services is contrary to this ideal of a moral society.
Well, look, here's of course that's we share the same vision, Adam, for sure. But, and I want to address this to Larry and see where he stands on this. For me, I'm not a voter, right? I'm a radical anarchist.
Ooh,
I'm not going to hold on. Well, hold on. I'm not a voter, but the issues that, as I've said this to many people, I'm also not an ideologue when it comes to voting, right? For someone to get me in the voting booth, it really is about the things that would actually get me to register are not these big, huge issues. The things that would actually get me to register is repealing specific taxes in a specific area where I live, real policy. That's what would actually get me as a radical to actually make a move and vote. So I guess what I'm saying is that for people like me who say, yes, okay, I'm with you on the big issues. Obviously, I've staked my sort of life and my consciousness on those issues. But what I expect as a radical from the Libertarian Party is to at least be working hard to put some things on the ballot that I can actually vote on, real concrete things, even if they're small. And aren't we hurting ourselves? Overall, the whole libertarian movement, aren't we hurting ourselves if we don't create the biggest tent possible, and that tent includes those people who maybe, as it stands right now, are not necessarily ready to hear a message that Adam's saying? Don't we have a responsibility as people, the people who are participating in the political process? Don't they have that responsibility?
Well, look, I'll cover several things. One, you should vote. Number two,
I'm not going to have it, Larry.
I know, but you should. Next, hopefully I'll be able to give you something motivating to vote for.
Okay, let's do it.
And so will Adam. Adam's running 2020. That's a reason to vote. All right, so vote for him at least. All right, any case, yes to all those things. The first thing you have to realize is I think what Adam's saying is a global issue, and I do believe that the convert is actually the right word. I'm actually okay with that word. I say it all the time. We want to the most zealous are the converted. Right? I always say it when I'm out there. I said the guy who walks into the Libertarian Party saying, "You guys are crazy." That guy, when he's converted, he's your next state chair. That guy is the guy, right? I mean, the most zealous are the converted. So, Adam, you're on the money. Absolutely, I agree 100% with you. What I'm also saying is there's also a responsibility that you talk about, Vin, and that is as we grow the movement, lots of people are going to start coming in. They're going to come in not because they get it. At what Adam's level is. They're not going to get it right away. They're going to come in because it sounds cool. That's why they're going to come up front. I'm one of those guys. I heard Gary Johnson speak, and I didn't really know what libertarianism was. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. That sounds different. Wait a minute. Government isn't the answer for everything? I mean, that was kind of my epiphany. And then I came, and then there were people in the party who showed me the way. So we have to be open to let those people come in who don't really get it, who just think it sounds cool, and talk them through until they go, I'm in, I got it. So there's never going to be a full unity. I think that's correct. But conceptually, the unity is nonviolence. That's the conceptual unity, is nonviolence. But some people can't get there right away. It takes them time. I know people say things like this. I've had this happen. But Larry, you don't want to get rid of NASA, do you? Right? So, because they think NASA's cool. And I get it. NASA is cool. I mean, when it comes to cool points, NASA goes to Mars. That is absolutely cool. But their concept is
SpaceX. Already, the market.
Private. Yeah, I'm going private too. But
on this, Larry, while
that's
you're on
what I'm
this,
saying. I don't want to hit them with SpaceX right away.
Right.
I just want to say, come in, let's talk first. Then I'll get you with SpaceX a little bit later. Let's deal with NASA last. I don't want to turn them off right away. Maybe the guy really likes Star Trek and thinks NASA's fine. You can like Star Trek. It's okay. Come on in. Let's talk.
So, look, Arvin, isn't there a responsibility? I think that isn't there a responsibility, particularly for, like, I do agree, as libertarians, as individuals, we certainly have a responsibility to stick to principles. Isn't there a responsibility for those individuals who are sort of the gatekeepers and responsible for people coming into the party? isn't there a responsibility that some of that is held back a little bit, as Larry says? I think it's like the Scientologists, right? They don't tell you the whole story about the people being dumped into the volcano. You gotta get in. You gotta get involved in that. No, I make light, and please don't sue me, but. No, it's a very serious question.
Okay,
like,
I'm a level 8 with my faith. I don't know where you are.
Let's compare the party to some more cults.
I'm sorry, dude.
Yes.
But no. But look.
I know what you're saying, Vin.
Yeah.
And here's the difference, though. I mean, there's an important difference. Is Scientology is actually trying to trick people. It is an actual bait and switch on purpose enterprise that is deliberately withholding its ideas in order to rob people.
Good point.
And the idea that the Libertarian Party, which fundamentally opposes both force and fraud, should start out with, a light fraud, a lie of omission, which in my opinion is still absolutely a lie, to me does two things. One, it actually just confuses people, because what can happen is, let's say we tell everybody Libertarian Party is just about soda tax. But we know we're trying to trick them later or to convert them later on. What happens when they start converting people before they themselves even know what we're about? Now, they aren't there trying to bring somebody down the path. They think that the path ends at soda tax. And so we end up creating a strategic messaging mess. We create something that is very, very problematic and very, very dangerous. Now, to speak to another point that you brought up, which is that, listen, a lot of the people who we have failed to win over, who are not voting for us, or in your case, not voting at all, are the people who actually do get it. And I think it's important that we recognize that right now, many self-identified ANCAPs, people who are as libertarian as it gets, in the last elections, they voted for Trump. Many did. I spoke to many who did. I know many who did. I know many more indirectly on social media who did.
Whether they voted for him or not, they certainly shilled for him. A lot of them. So then that's just as good.
They definitely did that, and then they voted for him. They supported. Right. Now, if we are able to win over people who don't get libertarianism at the expense of, basically at the cost of turning away people who deeply, deeply get it, it means that that's not a good strategy. We're taking the people who really understand that, yeah, you can use a soda tax to open a conversation, but don't end it there. Those are the people that we're losing. So I think that it's very important at the strategic level that we do whatever is necessary to make sure that the people doing our outreach for us, and that's whether it's candidates or state chairs or whatever, have gotten past the soda tax point, that they understand that militarism is bad. They understand that what the police is doing is often wrong. They understand that a government needs to be completely out of education. We need to make sure that those people who are our messengers, however they choose to open a conversation, and as polite as they need to, they should at least know what the real thing is. And I think that a lot of times we have actually failed in that. And so I think it's important that we do what's right. And I've told many people that I'm not smart enough to know what the right strategy is always. Because if you'd asked me 10 years ago if something like Trump's strategy was good, I would have said, no, it's insane. But I am smart enough to know what's true and what's false. And when I don't know the strategic thing to do, I think it's best to go with whatever the true thing is.
So let's hold on, yeah, because this question's for you, Adam. Hold on, really quick, because I think what he's bringing up really goes to a question that arises for you, because certainly, Adam, you are to the Libertarian Party in terms of the candidates that have been fielded. You are what a Ron Paul is to the Republicans, what a Bernie Sanders is to the Democrats, right? You represent the sort of You represent, I really don't want to say fringe, I really don't want to say far end, but you definitely represent the full manifestation of what this thing could.
The soul of freedom.
Right, but what I'm
saying
is this, isn't it very, very responsible, or isn't it a win for both the Democrats and Bernie Sanders that Bernie Sanders is to the left of the Democrats? Isn't it a win for the Republican Party to have a Ron Paul or a Rand Paul in the Republican Party, and the fact that the position of Rand Paul is not reflective of the overall position of the Republican Party? It's sounding like what we're potentially talking about is, at the party level, having the party be the basically potentially, at least party leadership, speaking like Adam Kokesh. But then doesn't, one, Adam Kokesh's brand lose? Two, as Larry says, don't we lose some potential people coming in because we're speaking way too radically? And three, don't I get hurt in the process because then people say, oh, well, you're just a member of the Libertarian Party, which no offense, it's not, I'm not taking offense, but I'm like, there should be a much broader spectrum here.
Well, Vin, I think you're setting up a bit of a false analysis there based on a sort of traditional political approach of the left-right thing. But you said a lot of really important insights. I'm really glad to get to build on that, because within the libertarian movement, what we see is a really broad human freedom movement. And you know this, I know you've talked about this, as a paradigm shift. So it really doesn't matter if we have some people who are, speaking the message from different perspectives. And I want to differentiate. I think Arvin, you set up a bit of a false dichotomy as well. And I want to kind of defend Larry's position here in that some people, you don't have to be deceptive to give people the easy in. You don't have to be, it's not necessary. You were kind of implying, Arvin, that Larry's method was deceptive, and it can be. And some people who do it, yes, we'll do that kind of like, we'll just rope you in with the soda tax.
And I was quiet. I was good.
But that's the exception, and I think there's Ron Paul really is, Vin, I kind of resent your analysis there saying that he was more like the heart and soul of the Republican Party.
Well, I'm saying when people think of what the ideal classical Republican would be. You understand what I'm saying? That's what I mean.
No, most of them think Ronald Reagan, unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But your point is well taken, and what you were getting at with the bigger point of how people come to this message. So, it's like the rifle and the shotgun. Sometimes you see someone, and it's a kid. Man, I got to stop using these military violent metaphors. It's terrible. Like I can't break myself of the habit sometimes. But
hugs and kisses, Adam. Hugs and kisses.
Yes. Okay. So it's the hugs and kisses approach. No, shotgun and rifle still just makes the point that much better. Okay. So but you have sometimes a rifle approach where it's precise targeting. You're going to take out a direct target. You see that low hanging fruit. And Vin, I think that you're one of those people who the Libertarian Party can approach with the rifle approach and say, look, hey, we're anti-militarism. We're philosophically consistent, and we're putting things on the ballot that are going to make immediate change. And, this is the one time it's going to be worth it for people like you to come out and vote. Personally, I think that's the future of this movement. I don't think it's playing games for registered voters. I think it's about motivating non-voters to come out. That's the majority of America. It's not people who vote passionately for one party or the other. It's people who inherently know that this is a racket. And like you said about Bernie Sanders, and Ron Paul, making the comparison there, I mean, even with Trump, but I always look for the silver lining. So I see Bernie Sanders, who essentially won the Democratic Party primary.
For sure.
He represents the fact that the majority of people who identify as Democratic primary voters are looking for something fundamentally philosophically different. They're thinking differently. I think Bernie Sanders, in that sense, in his role in 2016, was unintentionally part of the freedom movement. I think he really helped bring a lot of people our way. And I know this from personal experience because I've had people who watched my video. Every Bernie Sanders supporter needs to hear this, kind of making that point, that he really brought them in. So Ron Paul, similarly, for the Republican Party, was a huge gateway. Wait, is there a new print? We have to say that huge now? Did I say that right? It was a huge gateway.
You got to do this. You do it. Huge.
Huge gateway
I got
to bring conservatives into the freedom movement. And we need to be careful not to compromise our principles to appeal to them, but at the same time, we can support different voices. I get to play I'm a combat veteran card. Step to me. Let's see what happens. You're not going to talk me down off of this position. Mm-hmm. I was there. And I'm sure Larry can relate to this. One of my favorite jokes is, how many veterans does it take to screw in a light bulb? You don't know. You weren't there, man. Okay. All right. That's enough. That's enough of that.
Larry, I want
let me touch this. Exactly.
And what is Larry? What is your message to? And you could tie it on. What is your message to police and military who would be thinking about the Libertarian Party?
Absolutely. First thing is, you can do both. You absolutely can do both. You can both reach out to people who are much more waiting for, earth-shaking, messaging, and people who aren't. You can do both. You can do both as an individual, which is hard. I'm finding that out myself, very difficult, but I'm practicing. I'm getting better at it, being able to say messages that bring both sides in. But if you can't, then focus on one or the other. I've said a million times, we need multiple. We need a diversity of thought with unity of principle, a diversity of action with unity of purpose. We need that. That's important. So I do think you can do both. On top of that, there is a difference.
Hold on, Adam. Go ahead, Larry. Finish, please.
So there's also a difference between being honest and being unnecessarily open. They're two different things. I can tell you right now, I have a hole in my sock. Does that matter? Is it relevant? Not at all. I don't, by the way. I just made that up. But the point is, so what if I do or I don't? Am I lying because I don't tell you? No, it's not relevant now. If you want to sell me a pair of shoes and you take my shoes off, I might want to tell you, by the way, I got a big hole in my sock. So the information becomes relevant as they move deeper in, not that I'm trying to hold it. And if they ask me a specific question, I would absolutely tell them. I would never lie, I would never fool or tease them in any way, shape, or form. But I can give them the message as they need it, as they move in. And the last piece is, I think the goal is similar to kind of what Adam is saying is, I don't think the goal for us is to get the president in. I don't think the goal for us is to bring over Rand Paul. I don't think that's our goal at all. I think our goal is local victories so they can see people who are libertarians actually govern and actually get rid of a soda tax. Like actually get rid of one, right? Actually make that happen.
Stop the governing.
And then say that again?
Stop the governing.
Yes, okay, I'll buy that. Even begin to govern less. Remove government out of their local worlds to the best of their ability. The problem is most people still think, and I live in New York City, and I hear this. Arvin, you're in Baltimore, right?
Oh, DC.
DC, so you know the same thing. When people hear the word anarchy, they assume that means death and destruction in the streets.
Right.
That's their assumption. They don't get that there can be still safety, prosperity, value without that. So I think if we win at local levels, that'll make people like you, Vin, go, wait a minute, these guys actually did something. They put something on the ballot. It actually worked. Government got smaller. Wow, let's keep going. So I think we can do all of those things together. And my message is, if you're asking for my message.
Your message to the military, yes.
Yes. The message to the military is, I get why you joined. You joined for the exact same reasons that the Libertarian Party exists. The exact same reasons. You were trying to have peace, prosperity, liberty, honor, personal responsibility. That's why you joined. And thank you for that. Now, get out and join us. That's my message. I'm glad you did it. Well done. Nice, it's done. You had great intent. Now, leave. Join us. We need you now to join us now. Thanks for what you did. Move on.
Arvin, I want to ask you, Arvin, since what is then your, because I mean I think that it was a sort of it was a third party or kind of a tangential strategy document that you sort of that you put together, your thesis in your article. What is your message to the military? What is your message to soldiers? What is your message to police officers to get them into the party?
My message to the people who are currently serving the state in any way, and this applies to the military, it applies to police, it applies to teachers in government schools, it applies to people who are working government jobs, is there are reasons for doing what you're doing right now. But there is a better life for you outside of it. Better in terms of moral purpose, better in terms of the impact you will have on the world, better in terms of your personal life. Listen, both of my parents were civil servants. Now they're both entrepreneurs. I've seen what happens to people who leave government service of any kind, not just military, and step out into the actual free market and see how ennobling it is, how much dignity it brings. So my message is not very different from Larry's, which is there are reasons for doing everything. And sometimes those reasons are motivation, like by honor and things like that, that usually motivate people in the military. Sometimes the motivations are purely financial and survivalism, which is what causes most people to work for, the federal or state government as bureaucrats. But my message is you can find something better. understand that what you're doing right now, even if you just understand that it's a compromise, fine. And then realize that this is a compromise, and when you have the opportunity to step out, then step out. See what else there is. Don't think that something that involves the government is noble because it's with the government. If anything, that makes it less noble. Instead, see what you can do without it. And so that would be my message to everybody currently involved with government service.
Adam, since you put this thing together, I think that's those are two actually very, very persuasive and powerful messages from both of those gentlemen. Since you put this thing together, I'll let you sort of have the last word on this, because I'm sure you have some last words to say.
Well, I was just taking notes while these guys were giving their answers to that last question, because that was great, guys. That's beautiful. The only thing that I could have to add to that would be, for those who are currently in those positions, that getting out of those positions, no longer working for this institution that is fundamentally unethical, is about reclaiming your freedom, reclaiming your individualism, and reclaiming your humanity. That is so huge as a gift that we get to share with people. And about what Larry said about the different people representing different voices, different versions of this message, different windows, different gateways, this is where we have unity in the movement as really the most important priority for us, because we need to be supporting everybody who's helping move humanity in this direction. Ron Paul was a gateway. In a sort of distant way, yes, Bernie Sanders was a gateway. Gary Johnson was a gateway. And of course, I'm reminded of Mark Feldman's closing remarks at the presidential debate at the 2016 convention. I was very honored to be in the front row for that, to hear him talk about Gary Johnson libertarians and Austin Peterson libertarians and John McAfee libertarians and Darryl Perry libertarians, and that everybody has a role to play in this movement. And as long as we stay true to those principles of nonviolent communication, of being respectful, of being empathetic, of listening to people, and of not accusing anybody. Again, I'll just say, hate the sin, not the sinner. Hate the government, not the government employees. We could keep going with this all day, but I think that's really important. And this is where I think it's really great to see that there is this unity of purpose in all of these different voices coming together. And regardless of how direct about it, we all know that at the heart of what we are doing, we are bringing a message of love and peace and compassion that is completely, directly contradictory to every government's sense of militarism.
I really want to thank you guys for agreeing to do this. It's good to see that, it's funny, because a friend of mine who also happens to be an anarchist said, you know what, I'm looking around the political landscape and we are the adults in the room. Like, the libertarians are the adults in the room. Like, that the fact that we can get together, obviously with very disparate views, but we all are kind of after the same thing, and that we can try to at least come to some truth, and that we try to see where each other stand and try to understand each other. I think it's just a testament to the movement, and I think that it really bodes well for all of us. I want to really thank you guys, Arvin Vohra, Larry Sharpe, Adam Kokesh. Thank you guys for coming on the show. This was absolutely great.
Thank you, Vin.
Thanks, Adam.
My pleasure.
Thank you guys.